Hey everyone, if you like what we're doing here at Deviant, consider joining the Deviant Patreon. It's a great way to support the show, and there are several benefits available starting at the price of free. So please go to patreon.com/deviantpodcast and see what a membership has to offer you.
The story you are about to hear is true. It's part of an active and ongoing federal investigation. And if you have information that could help, contact your local FBI office or go to tips.fbi.gov. This show contains material which may be unsuitable for younger audiences.
Okay, after the courier thing in Vermont, it kind of calms me out for a while, and I just went back to Alaska and just worked, for 6 months and everything business as usual. But after the stuff in Alaska, I couldn't concentrate anymore on anything but that sort of thing, and just lost interest in work and whatever day-to-day stuff there was. And that's always the reason I've done the kind of things I've done, mostly for the adrenaline. It's not really, money is part of it, but that's not like the house that I burned down. It's not so much why I did it, it's just more like why not.
Next time you got away with it, you up the ante a little bit, or that make it something a little more difficult?
Well, the only time I ever really upped the ante was with the Alaska stuff that I started doing. That we're not talking about.
Okay.
The Alaska stuff, the stuff we're not talking about, is in part here on a surveillance video. As we watch, it's easy to see a teenage girl, all alone, running the Common Ground coffee kiosk on East Tudor Road in Anchorage, Alaska. These kiosks dot the road all over Anchorage. They tend to stand alone, detached from any of the strip malls and storefronts farther in.
They're designed to be easy to get to, and to Alaskans, they're all-season refuges for caffeine and warmth. They're tiny, and they generally fit one person, the barista. In early 2012, inside Common Ground, that one kiosk on that one winter night, the surveillance video shows a shadowy figure approach the window. Serial killer Israel Keyes was at the beginning of his undoing.
We're all wired differently. Some of us are wired for good. Some of us are wired for bad. But a select few step outside of all society's boundaries. From Cold Open Media, this is Deviant. Part 3.
Welcome back to Deviant. I'm Andrew Iden.
And I'm Dan Sembatovich, and we're happy to be back with you, and we're happy you're back with us. If you haven't already, please hit the follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast, and if the place you're listening allows a rating and a review, please leave one of those too. It helps us out a lot. And as long as we're talking about following, please follow us on social. We're on Instagram and TikTok at deviant.podcast.
In our first series of episodes, we're out to find out how far serial killer Israel Keyes really went.
Here's what we have to go on so far. An incomplete picture with some confirmed victims. That's Bill and Lorraine Currier of Essex, Vermont. There are some definite no's, and there are also a whole bunch of maybes. In the first 2 episodes, we learned how Israel Keyes operated, how he was raised, and how he gradually turned into the most meticulous and premeditated known serial killer in history.
We left off the last episode at the scene of his capture, skipping forward about 14 years in time. There's a reason we did that. As we chase the truth about Keyes, we're starting with what we absolutely know, the indisputable truth. For Israel Keyes, that's the beginning and end of his story. The middle is the mystery, and if you want to solve a mystery, you need to start with all the available facts.
This episode is the last step of that, our last chance for gas before we head out into the desert, the things we don't know, but suspect.
This is the crime that got him caught and handed police a serial killer that they had no idea even existed. This is the story of Samantha Koenig. On February 1st, 2012, Samantha Koenig is working at the Common Ground coffee kiosk in Anchorage, Alaska. She's 18 years old. She's an animal lover with hopes of working with them when she gets older. She's also considering the U.S. Navy. She's known for a big smile, a sarcastic wit.
It's closing time, and just before 8 p.m., Samantha's busy shutting everything down for the night. At the same time, across the street in the parking lot for Home Depot number 1301, a white Chevy pickup pulls to a stop.
A dark figure dressed in black and wearing a hat walks across the parking lot, crosses Tudor Road in the direction of Common Ground.
On the video, you can see Samantha closing up shop, and then she suddenly steps back from the drive-thru window and puts her hands up. That dark figure is leaning into the drive-thru window from the outside with what appears to be a gun in his hand.
Samantha reaches up and turns off all the lights in the coffee stand. For nearly a minute, Samantha stands frozen, hands still up.
That small drive-thru window is the only thing between her and the man outside. She makes 2 different trips to the cash register, opening the drawer both times.
She crouches on the floor, and for nearly 5 minutes, the man in black, just outside the window, struggles to break through into the coffee stand. Finally, still with a gun in his hand, he figures it out and leaps through the window. Just like with the couriers, it's a blitz attack. The monster is inside the house.
He moves swiftly in that small, confined kitchen. Samantha stays on the floor, and after what looks like a physical struggle, both she and the man in black stand up and walk out the back door of the kiosk.
For a brief second, surveillance cameras catch a shot of Samantha's face, clearly terrified as she's led out of the coffee stand into the white Chevy truck in the IHOP and Home Depot parking lot.
Israel Keys drives his truck and Samantha Koenig away into the night.
The next afternoon, the owner of Common Ground Coffee gets a call from Samantha's dad, James Koenig. When the owner checks the surveillance cameras on his phone, the silent video he watches tells the same terrifying story you just heard. James calls 911 and Anchorage police begin looking for Samantha. That includes Detective Jeff Bell, who is about to become a key player here. He sat down with us to tell all, and this is where he comes in. At the beginning of Samantha's story, and at the beginning of the end of Israel's.
So when you first saw that surveillance footage from the coffee hut, you weren't suspecting foul play.
Well, it's not that I wasn't suspecting that. I mean, I certainly thought in the back of my mind that it could be real. But personally, I had never been involved in a missing persons case where it actually turned out being a real missing person who was kidnapped and abducted and we never found again.
You know, from a law enforcement perspective, at that point, what is your sort of odds that she is still alive?
Well, I can tell you initially, early on, that I believe we all felt like there was a high likelihood that she was still alive. But at the time, the likelihood of, in Anchorage, Alaska, of somebody being taken and never being found again was almost unheard of. And so there was lots of things that we thought. Mainly, it did look suspicious to us that it didn't look like there was, a struggle. We couldn't actually see a gun, even though her indications were that somebody was pointing a gun at her. She looked calm. He looked calm. They appeared to just kind of walk off together. And so there was some thoughts early on that, maybe she has another boyfriend, or maybe her boyfriend was involved and they were just stealing the money and going off for the weekend and they were going to come back. And so there was a lot of that type of conversation going on.
And where was Keys while all this was happening? Well, the morning of February 2nd, less than 12 hours after Samantha's abduction, Israel Keys showers, calls a cab, and goes to the airport with his girlfriend and daughter. They board an Alaska Airlines flight from Anchorage to Houston on their way to 5 days at sea on a cruise ship, leaving out of New Orleans. And while Keys is in the air, the search for Samantha begins.
I was contacted by the SWAT commander. He was looking for people to help with, at the time, what was called a Kingfisher. Back then it was secret. We didn't tell people about it, but it was a device that the feds had that would essentially convert into a cell tower. And so we could drive a vehicle around that had the Kingfisher in the back of a truck covered by a shell. And we could locate cell phones positions by driving the vehicle around and then anticipating that the cell phone would then connect with the Kingfisher instead of the actual cell tower. And we would be able to locate the cellular phone that Samantha had. And so that's what we did for the first several days, was search for the cell phone with the Kingfisher. And that was my role initially. Then it kind of rolled into a surveillance squad. Our task for the next several weeks were 24-hour surveillance on any people of interest the department developed as potential suspects or people that we wanted to know where they were going to and coming from.
So let's talk about her boyfriend. Where was he in all of this? Well, this is an important sequence of events. The night Samantha went missing, he drove to pick her up at 8:30. The lights were off and Samantha wasn't there. He looked inside the coffee hut and noticed that it was a bit of a mess. He told police that he found that odd because she was pretty neat about these things. They'd been fighting recently, so he figured that maybe it had something to do with that. That belief was reinforced at 11:30 that night when he got a text message from Samantha's phone that said, "F you asshole, I know what you did. I'm going to spend a couple of days with friends, need time to think, plan, acting weird, let my dad know." He later told police that it didn't look like her writing, and as you might have guessed, it wasn't.
In nearly 7 hours after Samantha went missing, around 3 a.m. or so, her boyfriend says he stepped outside the house he was living in with Samantha and her father, James. He saw a man going through the truck he and Samantha shared. They locked eyes for a moment, and then they both went their separate ways. He never told any of this to investigators until he was interviewed. When asked why he never called this in, he said that he didn't think police would do anything until Samantha had been missing for at least 24 hours.
In hindsight, it was a sliding doors moment.
There was probably almost a month. We didn't get any information, and we were waiting for information, some kind of lead, something that would give us something to go on. And I think I can tell you, as those days went on, everybody's beliefs were that it was much more serious, that it was real, that she was really gone, and then we may not, ever find her or see her again. And it wasn't until the ransom note and the photo was found and the message was sent over the cell phone that we actually got our first lead from the night she was taken. And so everybody was excited about that, obviously, because we now had something to do other than just sit around and do surveillance 24 hours a day, waiting for that other foot to drop.
On February 18th, after taking that cruise and spending several days in Texas, Israel Keys returns to Anchorage.
And on the evening of February 24th, almost 3 weeks into the search for Samantha, her boyfriend receives another text message from her phone. It said, "Connor Park sign under pic of Albert. Ain't she purty?"
When police respond to Connor Park that night, posted on the sign is a flyer for a lost dog named Albert.
And underneath, just as the message said, is a Ziploc bag that contains a ransom note. The note demands $30,000 be deposited into the bank account that Samantha and her boyfriend share.
It's an account that Israel Keys has access to because remember when Samantha's boyfriend saw that man going through their truck? Of course that was Israel, and their ATM card was one of the things he took from the truck that night.
Also in that Ziploc bag, a photo of the Anchorage Daily News dated February 13th, 2012. And next to the newspaper, Samantha Koenig. Her eyes are open and she has makeup on. For the family, this is proof of life. Samantha lives. But police weren't so sure.
When you saw that photo for the first time, what was your first thought?
I believe, as I recall, having many conversations with the detectives and the other investigators at the time, my personal belief, as I stated, I believe at the time to them, was that she was either deceased or unconscious. And I believed that because in the photograph, I believed that I could tell that you can see Israel Keys' arm. We didn't know it was Israel Keys at the time, but you can see the person's arm and you can see their forearm muscle tense, forearm muscle. So you could tell that person was either using some strength to hold Samantha in a certain position, but it didn't appear that Samantha was resisting or had any muscle tone that I would have expected to see if she was being held, forcefully. So it appeared to me as though it was kind of a staged photo. I think Israel wanted us to think that she was fighting and he was holding her down, but in reality was he had the only muscle tone in his arm and there was none in her body.
What was the other side of the debate for investigators who thought she may have been alive there? What was the rationale in thinking that?
Well, I think that everybody's hope is that she's alive and that we're investigating a case where we can recover her alive. And so I think that the people who looked at it and thought that she could be alive were hoping that she was alive and that message was real in that note, and that we were actually going to be able to, whether it was through money or another means, find her location.
And after that picture came in and there was some hope, at least you had something to do. You had something to to figure out from this point? What happened next?
Well, I can tell you that, again, we had the Kingfisher out that night as soon as we had that cell phone hit. And we were able to, I think, distinguish based on cell tower data, a general location of where that message came from. It didn't match any of the information that we had at the time. We followed up hundreds of leads and every one of them ended up nowhere. But we at least had information that we could follow up on, whether it be the note, trying to decipher the note and trying to figure out what the note meant. I can tell you that what information in the note led us to believe that it was possible, or at least that Israel wanted us to think, that he had taken Samantha out of state. Because there were some inferences in the note about a desert and things like that that made us believe that she could be out of state. And so there was some investigating at the time to try to figure out if Samantha had flown out of state, whether it was using her name or friends' names or things like that. And so there was some investigating in that part. And then, of course, trying to figure out in the area of town where we believed that this message was sent, if there was any potential suspects or leads in that area. And it didn't pan out that there was.
And then the debit card started getting used.
Yes. Well, the debit card was used the first night, but that was just to check the balance. There was no money in it. And so we had a picture of a disguised person using it the night that she was taken.
The use of that debit card the night of Samantha's abduction was a huge break. And then for almost a month, the card goes quiet. Silence. No balance inquiries, no withdrawals. On February 29th, 5 days after finding the ransom note, James Koenig reluctantly deposits $5,000 in hopes of getting Samantha back. He initially wasn't sure about putting that money in, and it took some convincing from police before he did.
I think he believed us, and we convinced him that that was going to be the only leads we had, and that we were able to put a track on the debit card. We would know within 10 minutes, which is still a long time when you're looking for someone who's mobile, but we would know within 10 minutes when that debit card was used, and that eventually, if he used it often enough, we would catch him or get a picture of him or, something like that, and that it would be very helpful to the investigation.
That's what happened.
Yes, that's exactly what happened, is that had it not been for him putting that money in there and Israel using the credit card, I wouldn't say he used it recklessly or carelessly, but after the card was used the first night, it was used just before midnight in one part of Anchorage and then just after midnight in another part of Anchorage, quite a ways apart.
Inside the 4,000 or so pages of documents we obtained on this case, you can see the hunt for the man using Samantha's ATM card really pop off the pages. So we've enlisted some help to bring them to life. Most of these documents come from the FBI's Israel Keys case files.
From approximately 10:13 on 2/28/12 to about 12:28 a.m. on 2/29/12, the unsub conducted a balance inquiry, attempted withdrawal, which was denied because it exceeded the $500 daily withdrawal limit, and a series of 2 successful withdrawals in the amount of $500 each. These transactions were conducted at 3 separate ATMs, operated by 2 different financial institutions, scattered throughout Midtown Anchorage. Although substantial amounts of surveillance video have been collected throughout this matter, the unsub has routinely demonstrated excellent preparation and patience in the selection of outdoor ATMs located in areas with sparse late-night traffic. He also sometimes parks in adjacent lots and appears to scan the area thoroughly before exiting the vehicle and approaching the ATM. Finally, the unsub wears excessive amounts of clothing, including glasses, face masks, hoods, and gloves. To date, very limited descriptive data has been collected regarding the unsub, other than at least one subject appears to be a male adult with light skin tone, muscular build, and athletic physical movements.
The next night, we mobilized at least 60 officers from local, state, feds, DEA, railroad, anybody that had a spare body. And we actually physically surveilled every ATM machine that was open to the public in the city of Anchorage that next night. Well, 2 nights later, because we didn't have anything the next night. And then ultimately the card was used and we got notification, I want to say about 10 o'clock in the evening, that the card was used in New Mexico.
Do you remember your feeling when you're like, New Mexico?
Yeah. The ransom note did say that if he thought the police were on to him, and I'm paraphrasing, that he would just hand the card to some bum or somebody and let them run wild with it type thing. I mean, obviously he knew what his plan was with it and we didn't, but I can tell you we were all very disappointed. We had high hopes. Had he used it that night in Anchorage, Alaska, he'd have been arrested. We had everything covered.
police were shocked to see Samantha's ATM card pop up in New Mexico. But the FBI is built for this sort of thing. They swing into action quickly and begin to track the card's movements. They know that this is how they're going to catch their prey.
On 3/7/12 at approximately 9:57 p.m., investigating personnel were notified that the aforementioned debit card was used to withdraw $400 from an ATM at the Western Bank, Wilcox, Arizona. The surveillance footage collected included images of unsub suspected rental vehicle, which was subsequently identified as a late model white Ford Focus. In addition, unsub appeared to be wearing light-colored hoodie, light-colored full face mask, light-colored gloves, blue jeans, and light-colored shoes.
Later that night, about 75 miles east of Wilcox,
At approximately 11:24 p.m. AST, investigating personnel were notified the aforementioned debit card was used to attempt or conduct multiple transactions, including the withdrawal of $80 from an ATM at the WB 711 Main Street, Lordsburg, New Mexico.
the details were identical. Same suspect, same car. The FBI, with the help of ATM and area surveillance cameras, begins piecing together the path Israel Keys is taking across the Southwest and then into Texas.
To date, no evidence has been collected regarding the current location of Koenig or her potential presence with unsub in Wilcox and or Lordsburg. Due to unsub easterly direction of travel along Interstate 10, the aforementioned information was disseminated to numerous agencies and departments along the Interstate 10 corridor and the southwest border, including the Customs and Border Protection.
You're clearly following this from afar and the progress of this ATM card traveling through the Southwest. What was that like to sit back in Alaska and sort of hand it off to others and track that progress?
It was frustrating knowing that there wasn't anything that we could do from up in Alaska, knowing that the card was being used in another state. And so it was frustrating not to be involved in the following of the usage of the card. You know, in the end, it ended up being a good collaborative effort from law enforcement.
It is requested that Lubbock Resident Agency, LRA, conduct all logical investigation to locate captioned victim and unsub within its territory, especially the Interstate 10 corridor.
It is requested that Las Cruces Resident Agency, LCRA, conduct all logical
It is requested that Los Angeles International Airport, LAX.
It is requested that El Paso Division conduct all logical
It is requested that
investigation.
Sierra Vista Resident Agency.
It is requested that Phoenix Division.
It is requested that San Diego Division.
It is requested that San Antonio Division conduct all logical investigation to locate captioned victim and unsub within its territory, especially the Interstate 10 corridor.
Keys continues east into Texas, the FBI continuing to follow his progress.
Steve Rayburn with the Texas Rangers is the person who coordinated that investigation down there with Deb Galloway with the FBI. And unfortunately for Israel, he did trade his rental car in because he was worried he may have been caught on film in New Mexico or in Arizona. But unfortunately for him, they gave him the same type of vehicle with just a different plate.
On March 13th, 2012, Israel Keys, who had crisscrossed the country for years and evaded authorities, gets out of his rental car, a white Ford Focus, in the parking lot of the Quality Inn and Suites in Lufkin, Texas. On the squad car's camera, it looks like a routine traffic stop, but it's very much not.
How you doing? Good. I'm with Highway Patrol. The reason we stopped is kind of down there looking around. Where are you from?
I'm from Alaska.
What you doing down this way?
Visiting family, came down for a wedding.
Where you headed?
Back up to see my family.
Can you lay that knife right there?
Oh, sure.
He'd been stopped by the Lufkin Police Department in coordination with the Texas Rangers. At the request of the FBI, they'd been watching his hotel and car all morning. They badly wanted to talk to this driver and needed a reason to pull him over. They got one when Keys exceeded the speed limit by just a couple of miles an hour.
Lufkin 2450, 27, return Israel Keys, Anchorage, Alaska. Status is clear, no 29.
Mr. Keys,
Hi there.
Steve Rayburn with the Texas Rangers.
Okay.
How are you?
Texas Ranger Steve Rayburn was tracking the white Ford Focus for a while. Now, he and a local FBI agent are going to try and find out if this man is the man. It's not long before Keys starts playing defense.
You're not telling me what you're wanting me to do.
We're looking for a guy driving a little white car.
Okay.
Okay. Can I look at your wallet?
I gave you my ID. You're
I know.
not searching anything. Look, you have not given me any information. I've been very open with you. I've been telling you everything. You're not searching anything of mine until I know what's going on and why I'm still standing here and why I got pulled over for the first place. I haven't had a speeding ticket for 10 years, I don't think.
Listen, have you ever met a Texas Ranger before?
Honestly, I've never even really been to Texas. I was stationed here.
Have you ever met an FBI agent before?
No, I don't think so.
So it's pretty unusual you'd have a Texas Ranger and an FBI agent talking to you right now, isn't it?
You know what? I have no idea. You still haven't even told me why I'm talking to you.
It's probably something pretty serious, right?
How would I know?
Because you got an FBI agent and a Texas Ranger standing here talking to you.
You people question people all the time, right?
Okay.
You said you're looking for a guy in a white car. How many guys in white cars are there?
Right.
We're looking for a guy driving a white Ford Focus from Alaska.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a coincidence that your driver's license says you're from Alaska.
I've told you I was from Alaska.
Right. I know. Hey, it appears you've been completely honest with us from this point. We don't know if you're the guy that we're looking for.
I don't understand why
We're looking for a guy that's committed a pretty serious crime. We don't know if you're the guy or not. We would like for you not to be the guy. So we'd like your cooperation, and there are some things that are going to be in the guy's possession that we're looking for, all right, that you shouldn't have, okay? So that's the reason we're asking maybe to look at your wallet to make sure you don't have what we're looking for. We'd like to look in your car to see if you have.
You are not. Look, I know how this works. I watch enough TV to know how this works.
You might want to call your wife.
Yeah.
Unless you have a search warrant, you cannot.
I don't have a search warrant yet, okay?
I haven't done anything to warrant you getting a search warrant.
We've got enough to get a search warrant right now.
I mean, am I under arrest?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But this is not going anywhere. The car's not going anywhere.
At this point, Keys is not under arrest. In theory, he can just walk away and there's nothing police can legally do to stop him. But he stays put. At this point, what's already suspicion for police must be turning into loud, clanging alarm bells.
Yeah, I had a trooper pull him over. He's got a driver license from Alaska, and he just refused to let us consent to search his car, his wallet.
Pretty quickly, the agents secure permission to search his car. And while Israel stands off to the side, unable to see what's happening, the inside of his white Ford Focus is searched. At first, there isn't much to find. But then, they get to the trunk.
Got a lot of alcohol here. Got some children's clothing. Yeah, it doesn't have a hood, though. We can take a picture of it. Here you go. Here you go. Hey, gray hoodie with glasses in the pocket.
And gloves.
And a mask.
And a mask. We got our guy.
We got our guy. With those words, Israel Keys is about to move into a new phase of his life. He's still standing off to the side, and he must know what they're finding, and his mind must be racing.
A gray hoodie.
Go over here and make sure he didn't run.
Tell him he's under arrest for kidnapping in Alaska.
Cuffed, arrested, Keys is now in the front seat of the cruiser that pulled him over. Police turn on a camera and microphone.
You have the right to remain silent and not make any statement. Any statement you make may be used against you at your trial. Any oral or written statement that you make may be used as evidence against you in court. You have the right to have a lawyer present to advise you before and during any questioning by peace officers or attorneys representing the state. If you're too poor to hire a lawyer, you have the right to have a lawyer appointed by the court to advise you before and during any questioning. You have the right to terminate any of these interviews at any time, okay? You understand that?
Yep.
I don't have your ID, but would you state your name? Israel Keys.
His arms behind his back and followed by the FBI and local police, the Texas Rangers drive Israel Keys to the police station for questioning. The ride, silent.
For all of Israel Keys' planning, attention to detail, and success in eluding authorities for years, the one thing he didn't plan well, the one thing he didn't account for, was that debit card.
And at the police station, while going through his wallet, they find the card belonging to Samantha Koenig.
The serial sexual predator who prided himself on maintaining control, lost control. Finally, he slipped up.
Next time on Deviant. The meticulous killer who buried kill kits in far corners of the country, raped and murdered, has been caught. And he tells the truth about what happened to Samantha, and then begins telling his story. Israel's game is about to begin.
It's now up to investigators and us to figure out who Israel Keys actually is, how far he actually went, How many people did he actually kill? How many banks did he actually rob? How many houses did he actually burn down? The real depth of the monster behind the mask.
It was all a mind game with me. That was all I needed. That was my adrenaline. That's where I got my kicks, I guess, was being able to live two different lives and have no one have a clue. Just being able to look at people while they were talking to me and thinking that for all the years they've known me, they actually don't know me at all, really. And that's why I could go a relatively long time before feeling like I had to, before getting bored, I guess, and doing something.
Until next time, thanks for listening. If you aren't already, please remember to follow this show so you never miss an episode. Deviant is written, produced, and executive produced by Clark Goldband, Andrew Iden, and me, Dan Semitovich. Original scoring by Shuvo Sur, with editorial and production consultation from Jenny Ament. A big thank you to this episode's voice actors from Defense Diaries, Bob and Allison Mata. Marketing, sales, and distribution support comes from our friends at Gemini 13. Deviant is a production of Cold Open Media.